The massive alien warship moved through space like a living thing. Its crystal hull sparkled with blue and purple lights that pulsed along its smooth surface. Commander Zektar stood tall on the bridge, his forearms crossed behind his back as he watched the star system ahead. His species, the Gorthak, had ruled 12 different worlds across the galaxy. They were proud of their advanced technology and their ability to conquer other races. The bridge hummed with quiet efficiency. Alien crew members worked at stations that looked more like art pieces than control panels. Everything about their ship was elegant and beautiful, designed by minds that valued perfection above all else. Their weapons could turn solid matter into dust. Their shields could make the entire ship disappear from reality itself. No enemy had ever stood against them for long. Science Officer Velana approached the commander, her 6 eyes blinking in sequence as she read from a glowing tablet. "Commander, our scouts have finished studying the 3rd planet in this system. The inhabitants call themselves humans. They appear to be a young species that has only recently begun traveling between planets." Zektar's mandibles clicked together in what his species considered laughter. "How recent?" "Less than 100 of their years, sir. Their largest ships are barely the size of our shuttles. They use chemical rockets and primitive metals for construction. Our sensors show no energy shields, no plasma weapons, and no phase technology." The commander walked to the great viewing window at the front of the bridge. Below them, the blue and green planet turned slowly in space. It looked peaceful and defenseless. Another easy victory for the Empire. "How many inhabitants?" "Approximately 8 billion, sir. They live on all the major land masses and have built many cities. However, their technology appears to be at least 500 years behind our own." Zektar nodded with satisfaction. The Gorthak Empire had grown powerful by conquering worlds like this one. They would arrive, demonstrate their superior technology, and demand surrender. Most species gave up immediately when they saw what they were facing. Those that didn't were quickly defeated by weapons they couldn't understand or defend against. "Deploy the intimidation formation," Zektar ordered. "Bring us within visual range of their planet. I want them to see our fleet clearly before we make contact." The bridge crew moved to obey. Across space, other Gorthak ships received their orders and began moving into position. 12 warships arranged themselves in a perfect diamond formation, their crystal hulls reflecting the light from the system's star. It was a sight that had made countless other species surrender without firing a single shot. But as they moved closer to the human world, their sensors detected something unexpected. A single ship was moving toward them from the planet's direction. Unlike the crude vessels they had observed in the system, this one was different. It was large, almost half the size of a Gorthak warship, but it looked nothing like their elegant ships. Where Gorthak vessels were smooth and curved like works of art, this human ship was angular and brutal. Its hull was covered in thick metal plates that looked like armor. Strange projections stuck out from various points along its surface. It moved without grace or beauty, pushing through space with obvious mechanical thrust rather than the subtle energy fields the Gorthak preferred. "What is that thing?" Velana asked, staring at the approaching human vessel. "Some kind of military ship, I assume," Zektar replied, "though it looks more like a weapon than a spacecraft." "How primitive." On the bridge of the human ship USS Defiance, Captain Jake Morrison studied the alien formation through his viewing screens. He was a tall man with gray hair and steady hands, chosen to command humanity's first real warship because of his experience and calm nature. Around him, his crew worked at stations that were functional rather than beautiful, designed by people who cared more about getting the job done than looking impressive. 12 ships in perfect formation," reported Lieutenant Amy Carter from the communications station. "They're beautiful, sir, but they're also arranged like they want us to be scared." Morrison nodded. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for decades. Ever since their first telescopes had detected signs of alien activity in nearby star systems, they had known this day would come. The question had always been whether the aliens would be friendly or hostile. The formation approaching Earth seemed to answer that question. "What do we know about their technology?" Morrison asked. Chief Engineer Roy Phillips looked up from his console. He was a broad man with thick hands that were more comfortable with tools than with fancy controls. "Their energy signatures are unlike anything we've ever seen, Captain. The computer estimates their power output is about 50 times higher than ours, but they're broadcasting on very regular frequencies, almost like they're showing off." Dr. Karen Wells, the ship's science officer, added her own observations. "Sir, I'm detecting some kind of phasing technology. Watch this." She pointed to her screen where one of the alien ships seemed to become translucent, then solid again. "They can apparently shift in and out of our normal space." Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. Weapons that could destroy matter. Shields that could make ships disappear, and power levels far beyond anything humans could produce. If this came to a fight, it would be like bringing a knife to a gunfight. But humanity had one advantage that the aliens might not expect. "Open a channel," Morrison ordered. Amy worked at her controls for a moment. "Channel open, sir." "Alien vessels, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth Defense Force ship Defiance. You have entered human space. Please state your intentions." The response came quickly, translated by computers into English with a cold mechanical voice. "Primitive humans, you will surrender your world to the Gorthak Empire. Your crude technology cannot stand against our advanced capabilities. Submit now and your deaths will be swift." The bridge of the Defiance fell silent for a moment. Morrison looked around at his crew, seeing the same determination in their faces that he felt in his heart. Humanity had spent thousands of years fighting wars, learning hard lessons about survival and tactics. They might not have the most advanced technology, but they had something else. "Tactical, load all tubes," Morrison ordered quietly. "Engineering, bring all systems to full power." "Sir, are we really going to fight?" asked Lieutenant Commander Lisa Park from the weapons station. Morrison smiled grimly. "Lieutenant, these aliens think they know everything about warfare because they have better technology. They're about to learn that humans have been fighting each other for a very long time. We've learned things about combat that they never had to." The Defiance moved forward, its angular hull cutting through space toward the beautiful alien formation. Behind them, Earth turned in space, unaware that its fate was about to be decided by a single ship facing impossible odds. But Jake Morrison and his crew had studied the alien ships carefully. They had noticed things that the Gorthak in their confidence had overlooked. Sometimes the most advanced technology had weaknesses that simpler minds could exploit. Today they would find out if human ingenuity could triumph over alien superiority. The alien response to Captain Morrison's request was swift and terrifying. 3 of the smaller Gorthak ships broke from their formation and moved toward a large asteroid floating nearby. The human crew watched in amazement as the alien vessels seemed to fade away, becoming ghost-like and transparent. Then they flew directly through the solid rock as if it wasn't there. "Did you see that?" whispered Amy Carter, her voice filled with disbelief. The aliens weren't finished with their demonstration. Once they had passed through the asteroid, the ships became solid again and turned to face the rocky mass. A brilliant purple beam shot out from the lead vessel, striking the asteroid dead center. The entire rock, which had been the size of a city block, simply vanished. It didn't explode or break apart. It was just gone, as if it had never existed. On the bridge of the Gorthak flagship, Commander Zektar watched with satisfaction. This display always had the desired effect on primitive species. Show them technology they couldn't understand, demonstrate power they couldn't match, and most surrendered immediately. "Humans," came his voice over the communication channel. "You have seen what our technology can do. Your weapons fire solid projectiles powered by chemical explosions. Your ships are made of simple metals that our disintegrator beams can erase from existence. Surrender now and we will make your conquest quick." Science Officer Valana looked at her readings with confusion. "Commander, the human ship isn't retreating. In fact, it's moving closer to our position." Zektar's 4 eyes narrowed. Most species either ran or immediately transmitted surrender terms after witnessing Gorthak power. These humans seemed to be doing neither. On the Defiance, Captain Morrison turned to his chief engineer. "Roy, did you see how their phasing worked?" Phillips nodded, his thick fingers moving across his control panel. "Yes, sir. When they phase, they're broadcasting a very specific energy signature. It's like they're announcing to the universe exactly how they're shifting out of normal space. Very elegant, but also very predictable." Dr. Wells added her own analysis. "Captain, I think I understand their disintegrator weapon too. It breaks down the bonds between atoms, but it only works on solid matter in normal space. If something isn't there when the beam hits, it can't be destroyed." Morrison smiled. The aliens had just shown him their 2 greatest weapons, and in doing so, they had also revealed their weaknesses. "Lisa, what's our weapons status?" Lieutenant Commander Park checked her displays. "All railguns loaded with standard kinetic rounds, sir. Nuclear missiles are armed and ready. Close defense systems are online. The captain looked around at his crew. They were scared. He could see it in their faces, but they were also determined. These men and women had trained for years for this moment. They represented not just Earth's military, but thousands of years of human warfare experience. Tactical, target the 3 ships that just demonstrated their phasing ability. Fire a spread of kinetic rounds full velocity. The Defiance shuddered slightly as its railguns fired. To the alien ships, it looked like the humans were shooting simple metal bullets at them. Zektar almost laughed. Did these primitives really think solid projectiles could harm Gorthak vessels? Begin evasive phasing, he ordered. Let them waste their ammunition on empty space. The 3 targeted ships immediately began their phasing sequence, becoming transparent as they shifted out of normal space. The human projectiles would pass harmlessly through them, just as the ships had passed through the asteroid. But Roy Phillips had been studying the alien energy signatures for the past several minutes. As the enemy ships began to phase, he pressed a button on his console. Activating electromagnetic pulse charges, he reported calmly. The kinetic rounds that the Defiance had fired weren't simple bullets. Each one contained a small but powerful electromagnetic device. As the rounds approached the phasing alien ships, Phillips triggered the devices. The electromagnetic pulses disrupted the carefully controlled energy fields that allowed the alien ships to exist outside normal space. For just a moment, the 3 vessels became solid again, appearing exactly where the human projectiles were traveling. The impact was devastating. The kinetic rounds, traveling at a significant fraction of light speed, struck the alien ships while they were solid. The beautiful crystal hulls designed to deflect energy weapons offered no protection against simple physical impact. 2 of the ships shattered completely, their pieces spinning away into space. The 3rd was crippled, its elegant form broken and leaking atmosphere. On the Gorthak flagship, alarms began sounding. B'Elanna stared at her readings in shock. Commander, we've lost 2 escort vessels and the 3rd is severely damaged. How is this possible? Zektar couldn't believe what he was seeing. His advanced ships with technology that had conquered 12 star systems had been destroyed by primitive kinetic weapons. How did they hit our ships while we were phased? Sir, I'm detecting electromagnetic interference at the moment of impact. Somehow they disrupted our phasing fields. The commander's confidence began to crack. These humans weren't acting like any enemy the Gorthak had ever faced. They should have been awed by the superior technology, terrified by the demonstration of power. Instead, they had turned the demonstration against the aliens themselves. Captain Morrison watched the results of his attack with grim satisfaction. Amy, open a channel to the alien commander. Channel open, sir. Gorthak commander, this is Captain Morrison. You came to our space and threatened our world. You destroyed property to try to frighten us. Now you've learned something about human warfare. We don't fight fair and we don't give up. If you want to leave our system peacefully, you can go now. If you want to continue this fight, we'll teach you more lessons. Zektar's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation among his species. No primitive race had ever spoken to the Gorthak Empire with such confidence. These humans had just destroyed 3 of his ships with simple kinetic weapons and crude electromagnetic interference. Impossible, he muttered. They can't be this effective with such primitive technology. But the evidence was floating in space around him. His beautiful advanced ships had been outfought by a single human vessel using weapons that looked centuries old. The humans hadn't even used their best weapons yet, if this demonstration was any indication. Commander, B'Elanna reported. The human ship is moving closer to our position. They're not retreating. Zektar looked at the approaching human warship. Its ugly angular hull was covered in armor that looked crude but effective. Strange weapons pointed in all directions from its surface. Unlike Gorthak ships, which were designed to be beautiful as well as functional, this vessel looked like it had been built for one purpose only: war. Charge all disintegrator arrays, Zektar ordered. If these humans want a fight, we'll give them one. But we'll use our full power this time. The remaining 9 Gorthak ships began glowing with energy as their weapons charged. Their purple and blue lights pulsed faster, building toward a devastating attack that could erase the human ship from existence. But Captain Morrison had been expecting this response. He had studied alien psychology and warfare for years, preparing for this day. He knew that most advanced species, when challenged, would respond with overwhelming force rather than tactics. All hands, prepare for evasive maneuvers, he announced over the ship's communication system. "Remember your training. We're not trying to be stronger than them. We're trying to be smarter." The space battle was about to begin in earnest, and both sides were about to learn just how different their approaches to warfare really were. The space around Earth erupted into chaos as the real battle began. Purple beams of energy lanced out from the Gorthak ships, each one powerful enough to disintegrate a small moon. The beams struck where the Defiance had been moments before, but the human ship was no longer there. Captain Morrison had ordered his ship to move in patterns that seemed random to the aliens, but made perfect sense to human minds trained in combat. Instead of trying to match the elegant movements of the Gorthak vessels, the Defiance moved like a boxer, weaving and ducking while constantly changing direction. "Their targeting systems are designed for predictable movement," reported Dr. Wells from her science station. "They expect enemies to follow logical flight paths. Our evasive patterns are confusing their computers." The human ship shuddered as one of the alien beams passed close enough to scorch its armor plating. But the thick metal plates, which the aliens had dismissed as primitive, were designed to absorb and deflect energy weapons. The beam left a glowing scar across the hull, but didn't penetrate to the ship's interior. Chief Engineer Phillips monitored the damage from his station. "Hull breach on Deck 7, but the compartment was evacuated. Armor held. That beam would have gone right through their own ships, but it just burned our paint." Commander Zektar watched in growing frustration as his fleet's weapons repeatedly missed their target. The human ship moved in ways that defied his understanding of space combat. It rolled and twisted like a living thing, never where his gunners expected it to be. "How are they avoiding our targeting systems?" he demanded. Vilana studied her readings with confusion. "Sir, they're not using any advanced technology. They're simply moving unpredictably. Our computers can't calculate where they'll go next because there's no logical pattern." The Gorthak had spent centuries perfecting space warfare against opponents who fought like they did. Beautiful ships moving in perfect formations, using sophisticated tactics and advanced technology. They had never faced an enemy who fought like humans did. "Target their engines," Zektar ordered. "If we can't predict their movement, we'll stop them from moving at all." But as the alien ships focused their fire on the Defiance's rear section, Captain Morrison sprang his next surprise. "Lisa, deploy countermeasures." Lieutenant Commander Park pressed a series of buttons, and suddenly space around the human ship filled with dozens of small objects. To the aliens, it looked like the humans were jettisoning parts of their ship. Some of the objects glowed with heat, others reflected light like mirrors, and still others seemed to absorb energy completely. The Gorthak targeting systems, designed to track single large targets, became completely confused. Their sensors couldn't tell which objects were real threats and which were decoys. Their beautiful, precise weapons began firing at chunks of metal and electronic devices instead of the actual human ship. "Clever," admitted Science Officer Vilana. "They're using our own precision against us." But Zektar was done playing games with the primitive humans. "All ships close to knife fighting range. Use our numbers advantage. They can't dodge all of us at once." The remaining Gorthak vessels abandoned their elegant formation and rushed toward the Defiance from multiple directions. Their crystal hulls gleamed as they prepared to overwhelm the single human ship with concentrated fire. Captain Morrison had been waiting for this moment. "Roy, are the special rounds ready?" Phillips grinned, his thick hands working over his controls. "All loaded and waiting, sir. Tungsten penetrators, fragmentation charges, and a few surprises the aliens haven't seen yet." The Defiance suddenly stopped its evasive maneuvering and turned to face the approaching alien fleet directly. To the Gorthak, it looked like the humans were finally accepting their fate. But Morrison had one more lesson to teach them about human warfare. "Lisa, fire everything." The human ship erupted in a blaze of weapons fire unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Railgun rounds streaked out in all directions. But these weren't simple kinetic projectiles. Some of the rounds were designed to fragment just before impact, filling space with thousands of tiny metal pieces moving at incredible speed. Others contained small nuclear charges that exploded on contact, creating expanding balls of superheated plasma. The most devastating rounds were the simplest. Solid tungsten rods accelerated to nearly the speed of light, struck the alien ships with the force of small asteroids. The Gorthak shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, offered no protection against pure kinetic force. Commander Pete Jackson coordinated the attack from the Weapons Control Center, deep inside the Defiance. He was a quiet man who had spent years studying how to defeat superior opponents. "Concentrate fire on their weapon systems," he ordered his gunners. "Don't try to destroy their ships. Just make sure they can't shoot back." The Gorthak fleet found itself caught in a hurricane of projectiles. Their beautiful ships, designed to fight at long range with precision weapons, were being torn apart by crude but effective human tactics. Every time they tried to phase out of danger, electromagnetic pulses disrupted their systems. When they tried to maintain distance, nuclear-tipped missiles chased them down. Zektar watched 2 more of his ships break apart under the human assault. "This is impossible. How can primitive weapons be so effective?" "Sir," Velana reported, her voice shaking. "They're not trying to fight us the way we fight each other. They're using tactics we've never encountered. Our ships are built to counter Gorthak weapons, not human ones." The alien commander was beginning to understand the terrible truth. His empire had grown strong by conquering species that fought like they did. They had never faced an opponent who approached warfare from a completely different direction. The Defiance continued its deadly work, moving through the alien formation like a shark among fish. Its weapons never stopped firing, filling space with an endless stream of projectiles. The humans didn't try to match the aliens' elegant tactics or sophisticated technology. Instead, they used brute force and clever engineering to turn the battle into the kind of fight they understood. Chief Petty Officer Steve Burke worked frantically in the ship's ammunition storage areas, loading the weapons with rounds that had been modified during the battle itself. "Loading experimental fragmentation rounds," he reported over the communication system. "If they can phase through solid matter, let's see them phase through a cloud of expanding metal vapor." The human crew worked together with the efficiency that came from years of training and the desperation that came from defending their home world. They knew they were outmatched in technology, but they also knew they were fighting for something the aliens couldn't understand: the survival of their species. As another Gorthak ship broke apart under human fire, Commander Zektar realized that his carefully planned conquest was turning into a disaster. These primitive humans were systematically destroying his fleet with weapons that shouldn't have been effective against advanced Gorthak technology. The beautiful formation that had intimidated countless other species was now scattered, debris floating in space around Earth, and the single human warship that should have been destroyed in the first few minutes of combat was still fighting, still dangerous, still teaching the Gorthak painful lessons about the difference between advanced technology and effective tactics. The battle had been raging for over an hour, and the space around Earth was littered with debris from both human and alien ships. But while the Defiance showed signs of damage, it was still fighting effectively. The same could not be said for the Gorthak fleet. 6 of their beautiful warships had been destroyed or crippled by human weapons that should have been useless against advanced alien technology. Commander Zektar stood on his bridge, watching his carefully planned invasion falling apart around him. "Sir, the humans are adapting their tactics faster than we can respond," reported Velana. "Every time we adjust our shields or weapons, they find a new way to attack us." The science officer was right. The humans seemed to change their approach constantly during the battle. When the Gorthak began using rapid phasing to avoid kinetic rounds, the humans switched to wide-area fragmentation weapons that filled entire volumes of space with deadly metal fragments. When the aliens tried to maintain safe distances, the humans deployed guided missiles that could chase them for thousands of kilometers. On the Defiance, Chief Engineer Roy Phillips was working miracles in the engine room. His team had rerouted power systems, patched hull breaches, and even fabricated replacement parts using the ship's industrial equipment during the battle. "Captain, we've lost primary power to the forward railguns," he reported over the communication system. "But I can jury-rig the backup systems to carry the load. It'll burn out the circuits after a few shots, but we can keep fighting." This was exactly the kind of adaptability that the Gorthak couldn't understand. Their ships were masterpieces of engineering, built by the finest minds in their empire. Every system was perfectly designed and integrated with every other system. But this perfection came with a cost. When something broke, it couldn't be easily fixed or replaced. The human ship, by contrast, had been built by people who expected things to go wrong. Every major system had backups, and many components could be repaired or replaced with simple tools. The Defiance was designed to keep fighting even when half its systems were damaged. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Park worked at her weapons station, coordinating attacks that would have been impossible with alien technology. Steve, load Tube 7 with the experimental plasma rounds. Danny, can you boost power to the port railgun for 30 seconds? Affirmative, came the reply from Lieutenant Danny Rodriguez in the engineering section. You'll get full power, but the system will shut down automatically to prevent overload. That's all I need, Park replied, adjusting her targeting display. This kind of real-time modification during combat was something the Gorthak had never encountered. Their weapon systems were elegant and efficient, but they couldn't be changed or adjusted once the battle began. The humans, with their crude but flexible technology, could adapt their weapons to meet new challenges as they arose. Navigator Helen Wright plotted a course that used the gravitational fields of nearby moons to accelerate their kinetic rounds to even higher velocities. Captain, if we swing around Luna at the right angle, we can use gravity to add another 10% velocity to our next barrage. Do it, Morrison ordered. The Defiance changed course, using the moon's gravity to boost its weapon's effectiveness. It was a tactic that required split-second timing and perfect navigation, but it was exactly the kind of creative thinking that human military training encouraged. Communications Officer Scott Miller coordinated with automated defense platforms throughout the Earth system. These platforms had been dismissed by the Gorthak as primitive and ineffective, but they were perfectly positioned to provide crossfire support for the human warship. Platform 7 reports good targeting solution on the alien flagship, Miller announced. Platform 12 can provide flanking fire in 30 seconds. The humans were using the entire solar system as their battlefield, employing resources and tactics that the aliens hadn't even considered. While the Gorthak thought in terms of elegant ship-to-ship combat, the humans were fighting a system-wide defensive campaign, but it was the human crew's ability to work together under pressure that most impressed Captain Morrison. Chief Petty Officer Steve Burke was in the ammunition bay, manually loading weapons with rounds that had been modified during the battle. Lieutenant Bobby Chen led damage control teams that moved through the ship like trained athletes, fixing problems almost as fast as they occurred. Hull breach on Deck 12, Chen reported. We've got it sealed, but we lost the backup life support for that section. Understood, Morrison replied. Steve, how are we doing on ammunition? Running low on standard rounds, sir. But we've got plenty of the experimental stuff. The tungsten penetrators are working better than expected against their hulls. The captain nodded. Human weapons weren't as elegant as alien ones, but they were proving devastatingly effective. The tungsten rounds were simple metal rods accelerated to incredible speeds, but they hit with the force of small nuclear weapons. The Gorthak shields, designed to deflect sophisticated energy weapons, couldn't stop simple kinetic force, Commander. Zektar was learning the same lesson that had been taught to countless human generals throughout history. The most advanced technology doesn't always win battles. Sometimes the victory goes to whoever can think fastest and adapt quickest to changing conditions. Sir, the human ship has just changed its attack pattern again, Velana reported. They're now using some kind of cluster munition that breaks apart just before impact. The alien commander watched his screens as human weapons created clouds of deadly fragments around his remaining ships. Every time his fleet adapted to one human tactic, the primitives came up with something new. Their weapons were crude, but they were used with a creativity and flexibility that Gorthak military doctrine couldn't counter. How many ships do we have left? Zektar asked. 4 operational vessels, sir, including our flagship. 2 more are severely damaged but still capable of limited combat. 6 ships lost to a single human vessel. It was a defeat that would shame the Gorthak Empire for generations, if any of them survived to tell the story. But Zektar was beginning to understand that this wasn't really a defeat by inferior opponents. This was a lesson in the difference between technological superiority and tactical superiority. The humans had taken their crude weapons and simple technology and used them in ways that negated every advantage the Gorthak possessed. They fought like nothing the alien empire had ever encountered, turning every Gorthak strength into a weakness and every weakness into a strength. As another human barrage struck his flagship, Zektar realized that his species had made a fundamental error. They had assumed that because human technology was less advanced, human thinking was also less sophisticated. The reality was exactly the opposite. These humans thought about warfare in ways that were far more complex and creative than anything in Gorthak military training. The final moments of the battle came when Commander Zektar made a desperate decision. His fleet was in ruins, his carefully planned invasion had become a disaster, and the single human ship continued to fight with a determination that defied logic. With only his flagship and 2 severely damaged escorts remaining, he decided on one last desperate attack. All remaining ships prepare for emergency ramming speed, he ordered. We will phase directly into the human vessel and destroy it from within. It was a tactic of last resort, one that would likely destroy his own ships as well. But Zektar could not return to the Gorthak Empire with news of defeat at the hands of primitives. Better to die fighting than to face the shame of such a loss. The 3 surviving alien ships began their final approach, their crystal hulls glowing with the energy needed for emergency phasing. They would materialize inside the human ship's hull, tearing it apart from within. It was crude compared to their usual elegant tactics, but it was the only option they had left. Captain Morrison watched the alien ships approaching on a collision course. His own vessel, the Defiance, was heavily damaged. Smoke filled several sections. Half their weapons were offline and they had lost main power twice during the battle. But his crew had fought magnificently and they weren't finished yet. "Sir, the alien ships are beginning their phasing sequence," reported Dr. Wells. "They're going to try to ram us while phased." Morrison smiled grimly. Throughout the battle, the aliens had shown him their technology, and he had learned to turn each demonstration against them. This final desperate attack would be no different. "All hands brace for emergency decompression," he announced over the ship's communication system. "Lisa, prepare for Plan Omega." Lieutenant Commander Park's hands moved over her controls, activating systems that had been prepared for exactly this situation. "Plan Omega ready, sir. All sections report ready for emergency venting." The human captain had one final lesson to teach the aliens about the difference between sophisticated technology and practical thinking. As the Gorthak flagship began to phase toward his ship, Morrison gave the order that would end the battle. "Execute Plan Omega, all sections. Emergency vent now." The Defiance suddenly began tearing itself apart. Explosive bolts fired throughout the ship, jettisoning entire sections of hull plating into space. Emergency vents opened, releasing atmosphere in controlled bursts that sent debris spinning away from the ship. To the approaching aliens, it looked like the human vessel was destroying itself rather than face capture. But this apparent self-destruction was actually the most sophisticated tactic the humans had used in the entire battle. As the Gorthak flagship materialized inside the space that the Defiance had occupied moments before, it found itself not inside a ship's hull, but in the middle of a carefully orchestrated cloud of debris. The alien ship materialized surrounded by chunks of hull plating, mechanical components, and thousands of small objects that had been vented from the human ship. But these weren't random pieces of junk. Each piece had been calculated to occupy a specific volume of space at a specific time. Chief Petty Officer Steve Burke had spent the last few minutes of the battle loading the ship's emergency vents with special canisters. As the alien ship appeared among the debris, these canisters exploded, filling the space with clouds of metallic particles and small kinetic charges. The Gorthak flagship's elegant crystal hull, designed to phase through solid matter, found itself trying to occupy the same physical space as thousands of small objects. The result was catastrophic. The alien ship was torn apart from within as its own materialization. Process forced debris through every part of its structure. Commander Zektar felt his ship shuddering around him as systems failed throughout the vessel. Emergency lights flickered on as main power died. The bridge filled with smoke and the sound of failing machinery. "Impossible," he whispered, looking at the destruction around him. "How did they know we would try to ram them?" Science Officer Villana, her station sparking and failing, managed one final report. "Sir, they didn't just know. They prepared for it. This entire sequence was planned." The alien commander finally understood. These humans hadn't just been reacting to Gorthak tactics during the battle. They had been thinking several moves ahead, preparing for situations that might never occur. When those situations did arise, they were ready with solutions that turned alien advantages into weaknesses. The 2 remaining Gorthak escorts, seeing their flagship destroyed, immediately began transmitting surrender signals. Their commanders had no desire to face whatever other surprises the humans might have prepared. Captain Morrison stood on his damaged bridge, looking out at the wreckage floating in space around Earth. His ship was barely operational, held together by emergency repairs and the determination of his crew, but they had won. A single human vessel had defeated an alien fleet that should have been unstoppable. "Captain," Amy Carter reported from her communications station, "we're receiving a transmission from one of the surviving alien ships. Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was different from the arrogant tone they had heard at the beginning of the battle. Commander Zektar, speaking from the emergency bridge of his dying flagship, sounded tired and defeated. "Human captain, I request permission to speak." Morrison nodded to Amy, who opened the channel. "Go ahead, Commander. Your species fights like nothing we have ever encountered. We came expecting primitive resistance based on your technology levels. Instead, we found warfare elevated to something we do not understand. You have defeated ships that have conquered 12 worlds with weapons that should have been useless against us." The human captain considered his response carefully. The battle was over, but how it ended would determine the future relationship between their species. "Commander Zektar, your technology is impressive, but you made a critical error. You assumed that because our methods were different, they were inferior. Humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We've learned that the best technology doesn't always win. The best tactics do." There was a long pause before the alien commander responded. "We understand now. We came to conquer what we thought was a primitive world. Instead, we have learned that there are different kinds of intelligence, different ways of solving problems. Your people approach warfare in ways that make our advanced technology irrelevant." Morrison looked around at his crew. They were exhausted, injured, and covered in smoke and debris. But they had saved their world. More than that, they had announced humanity's presence to the galaxy in a way that would never be forgotten. "Commander, your fleet is welcome to make repairs and leave our system in peace. But understand this: Earth is under human protection. Any future visitors will be met with the same response if they come with hostile intent." As rescue ships launched from Earth to help survivors from both fleets, the first contact between humans and aliens ended with a lesson that neither side had expected. The Gorthak learned that technological superiority didn't guarantee victory. The humans learned that they could defend themselves against threats they had never imagined. Dr. Karen Wells would later write in her report, "We didn't win because we were stronger or smarter than the aliens. We won because we thought about the problem differently. In a universe full of species that all think alike, sometimes being different is the greatest advantage of all." The war that almost began had ended with understanding instead of conquest, and both species would be forever changed by what they had learned from each other.